back to Field Notes, the infrastructure podcast where we get to explore the systems that shape our world and the stories behind them. Today's guest is Brad Randall. Brad's career spans journalism, public outreach, and civic engagement, with a focus on storytelling that connects communities to complex issues. Brad, I am so glad that you are here today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Abby. It's a little bit of a reverse thing. I'm used to being the one doing the interviewing, so this is kind of a thrill.
I know. How does it feel? You're in the hot seat this time.
Well, I'll just try not to underestimate it. But no, I'm excited to be on Field Notes. I've been following what you've been doing, and you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Well, I'm so excited to have you. I want to jump right into this. Let's start off strong. You
Sure.
have worked in journalism and public outreach. How do you see storytelling shaping public understanding of infrastructure, especially in broadband?
Guilty as charged. Journalism background, public outreach. Today, what we do is so critical, especially with the millions, billions of dollars flowing into infrastructure from our tax dollars. We are kind of the go between what's actually happening out there with your money and the information piece where we're letting the general public know how it's being spent. And I've had the privilege to cover the BEAD program from beginning to now.
So
Before I
awesome.
worked for Broadband Communities, I was working for a show called World of Concrete, which is under Informa's umbrella, and that was where I was at before Terrapin. Started there right around the rollout of the bipartisan infrastructure law. And, concrete is certainly very important when it comes to
Right.
infrastructure, bridges, and that's the stuff we can see. It's easier to understand concrete, a little harder to understand broadband. So,
Sure.
I guess, let's get literal. We're describing what is literally the unseen.
Hmm.
What's underneath our roads, what's above our cars when we drive down the street on the telephone lines. And we're telling them how everything works.
Yeah,
It's an uphill battle, and it's hard to understand even for us, I'm sure sometimes.
absolutely. I think that's a great point. It's really hard not to get lost in all the technicality of it because it is very technical. But the stories are what makes it real for people.
Yeah, I mean it makes it real, and when you use your phone, it makes you understand how it works.
Right.
So we I think we have a pretty critical role. I really do, Abby.
I agree with you. So, building on that, how can broadband leaders and ISPs better engage communities through media and messaging?
Well, I think a lot of them are doing a great job. Broadband
Yeah.
Community Summit is a great opportunity for ISPs, for connectivity organizations to get their message out there and let folks know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And also, I think a lot of them do a good work with this, but tier two, tier three should do a better job promoting themselves and talking about what they do. They're
Mhm.
doing a lot of great work, and us in the media sometimes we have to dig. And I've
Mm.
often thought to myself, I shouldn't have to dig this hard. Some of these companies should be more open about some of the stuff that they're doing. But
Yeah.
I understand they're short staffed. There's people doing five jobs wearing multiple hats at once, and it's tough to have someone dedicated just to marketing when
Right.
you're kind of on the margins. Bigger companies have an easier time with that.
For sure. Yeah, there definitely needs to be some sort of marketing source for these smaller companies. I mean, I'm a firm believer that infrastructure deserves influence, and it is for sure lacking influence.
Yeah, and a lot of them do great work with digital equity,
Yeah.
with digital skills training. So we in the media want to know about that, especially because it can get redundant to write about the same companies over and over again. So
Right.
I think that'd be my advice is, look at your operations, and if you're getting the message out that you want loud enough.
Yeah. I like that. What roles do you see local journalism playing in holding broadband projects accountable? So making them more transparent and understandable. Because there's one thing to talk about them, but then there's another thing to talk about them in terms that people actually understand.
Well, that's a good question because what we do is, you said it's not too technical, but we get technical. And
Yeah.
mainstream media is not very technical, right? They're just
Right.
reporting on who's connected, who's not connected, what dollars are spent where. And
Mhm.
it's very much 35,000 feet looking down level, but that's necessary too. So I would just say, as long as we're writing about it, we're
Yeah,
doing the critical job of keeping people informed. And the more that you talk about it, the more people realize how important it really is.
for sure.
So that's not mainstream media's mission. That's where we come in. And
Yeah,
that's why we play such a critical role, because let's be honest, the infrastructure stories aren't sexy in today's media. If it bleeds, it leads. And,
for sure.
broadband's not bleeding. So we are telling kind of a story of unsung heroes in this country that are connecting our next generation, making sure people can work remotely and go to
Yeah.
school, all that.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I couldn't agree more. I love the way that you said that. Broadband is not bleeding, so it's not getting that
It's not
attention,
leading.
but there are still gaps. And I want to know from your experience, what are the biggest communication gaps in broadband and infrastructure development today?
Well, there's so many, unfortunately, that we still have in this country. But
Right.
I mean, it's a good thing because we're talking about it and we're working on fixing it. Tribal connectivity is one.
Mm,
Urban connectivity. A lot of major metros in this country still have connectivity deserts, and
yes.
obviously, what's going on in rural areas too is so important. But I also think about when BEAD is done.
Yeah.
We've revised BEAD. We've kind of, I hate to use the term watered down, but there will be more fixed wireless, more satellite, less
Mhm.
fiber, so less reliable connectivity. You're still going to get connectivity, it just won't be as good. Um,
Right.
so I think that's going to be a major gap we'll have to fill someday when we
Yeah.
think about it. We're kind of kicking the can down the road a little bit, and that's how it feels. But someday, folks are going to want to solve that.
Yeah. I completely agree. And I'm backpacking on top of that. How do you think that digital platforms like podcasts or social media can change how broadband stories are told and bring more attention to that?
We talk to people who are on the ground, right? Your field notes.
I
You're talking to
Yeah.
people who are in the field. And so they see these communities, they see what's going on, and they see how their work changes lives.
For
And
sure.
we can't be everywhere. We're in
Yeah.
an office most of the time. So we have to talk to people who are out there in the field
Yeah.
and bring those stories to life. And I think that's another angle of, we're talking so good about ourselves here, but that's another angle of what we do that really is critical.
Yeah.
Because if you don't get that story out there, how is the general public going to know what's important or going to know it's needed?
100%. And I think making these conversations understandable and more accessible, more human, more urgent, I think that that just brings a whole nother level of appreciation to really what's going on behind the
Yeah.
scenes, what we don't see.
Well, think about how important media was during the pandemic and getting the
Right,
message out there that folks had to drive to Taco Bell to do their
right.
homework. So that became a nationwide talking point, and I don't think it was intentional. It was just reporting on this is what's happening,
Yeah,
and it was very alarming to a lot of people. So years later, have we still have we forgotten about that period? Maybe we've forgotten about it a little bit.
a
Uh,
little bit.
God forbid we end up back there. Maybe we will still see kids at the Taco Bell in the future. But that's the gap that will have to be filled. Just to go back to your last question, and what I'm talking about, of course, is the revision to be the emphasis on saving money, over
Mhm.
spending it. And what's the cost benefit to that if you are watering down your infrastructure program, to the point where you're just going to have to spend more later? So
Mhm.
we'll see how it goes and how it looks like after all is said and done. But
Yeah.
I'm sure the folks that you've talked to have said the same things that I've talked to people who said there's going to be a lot of gaps left after this is done.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say that there won't be. I
Hmm.
think it would be dangerous to say that there won't be. So I
Well,
agree with you there.
nothing's 100% anyways.
Right, right. I completely agree. What advice would you give to broadband professionals trying to build that trust with the public, especially in communities that have been historically underserved, like you were talking about?
Well, I just, I have a podcast myself called Beyond the Cable, and I just was
Yeah,
lucky enough to speak to an individual, the CEO of Assured Communications. He's built relationships with tribal communities out there on the West Coast, and his message was just to listen and to be
yeah,
able to understand history from different perspectives. And it's not just tribal communities, but when you go into a community, you have to understand their story and kind of
yeah,
how you weave into it. So I think about my own hometown. We are a small town in New England that is growing, but we want to keep our small town charm.
yeah,
Another community, maybe a small rural community that just wants economic growth, and they're sick of being so small and passed over, and they want to keep kids in the community when they graduate high school. So you have to
yeah.
find out what that story is, how you can fit into it. I think
I
that's
love
that's
that.
such a crucial role
That's
of
such a great reminder. Yeah.
well, and that's what we do too, is we inform people in the industry
Mhm.
how to make these partnerships, what's worked for others, what hasn't worked.
Yeah. And I think that trust from speaking to others, to other leaders in the industry, what they say time and time again is it's not just about delivering a service, it's about showing up and listening and following through and just being consistent for these people that they're serving and showing that they care. That is a very common theme in all leaders that I've spoken to is I'm sure you can say the same is they're very passionate about what they're doing, which is so refreshing.
Well, if people feel heard, it's like a marriage. I feel heard. Usually makes things a little bit better, doesn't it? And if people feel heard, that's winning the battle there. That's winning
Right.
most of it right there.
For sure. Brad, before we wrap up, I would love to hear what is one infrastructure issue, maybe in broadband or beyond, that you think deserves more media attention right now?
Sure. Well, I'm kind of a nerd, and one of the things that I've always been interested in is space weather. So sometimes I write about it. A few times I've written about solar flares and how they've impacted our communications infrastructure, satellites, fiber. And I think that is an area that is underreported significantly.
Mhm.
There's just such vulnerability with our communications networks, our global communications system. If we did have a serious solar event, and I don't know how much you know about this stuff, Abby, but
Not a lot.
coronal mass ejections are very common from the sun during active periods, which we're right now in an active period for the sun. And that will throw off lots of plasma from the sun headed our way. Usually we survive it, no big deal. But
Yeah.
in 1859, there was a big event called the Carrington event, which fried telegraph wires all around the globe. If it happened today, it would probably knock most of our grid out and most of our communications infrastructure out. So, how are we building for that? How are we building resiliency? There are folks that are thinking about it. There are subsea cables that are built for this type of thing. There are a lot that aren't. So I think
Mm,
we have to think about that because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. The sun is not going to stop being active. It's 4 billion years old, or at least the Earth is. So we have to think
yeah.
about
Whoa, that's a big
it. Yeah,
concept to grasp.
it is.
Seriously, though, I think that that's something that people don't typically think of or talk about because it's overwhelming and a little bit scary.
Well,
Um,
I don't want to be an alarmist, but there are folks that are much smarter than me who think about this, who sound alarm bells on it that say,
yeah,
if this does happen, we're in some serious trouble. So there's ways to prevent it. It costs
wow.
money to do it. Folks
I
just need to
didn't
be
think
thinking that way.
yeah. Wow. Very cool. Well,
Yeah,
Brad, I before we wrap up, I would love if you could share where else we can find these articles and where we can find you with Beyond the Cable and anything else that you're working on.
sure. So I'm the editor of bbcmag.com. We are the digital brand of the Broadband Community Summit. It happens annually in Houston. You can head to our website to follow telecommunications news throughout the week, read about space weather if there is any. I love writing about that stuff. And Beyond the Cable is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We'd love if you could subscribe, put episodes out several times a month. Thank you for allowing me to plug myself there.
Oh, of course. That's what it's all about. Happy
Right,
to.
right.
Thank you so much, Brad, for joining me today. Your insights on storytelling and journalism and broadband are exactly what this industry needs more of. So thank you. And to our listeners, thank you so much for watching. We will be sharing clips and highlights from today's episode on LinkedIn, so feel free to tag Brad and join the conversation. Until next time, that's it from the field. Stay grounded.